What's up, bros? I'm your favorite Ukrainian mate Igor. Welcome to a brand new video. Subscribe, put a like, and let's go. In today's video, we will talk about the Russian language in Ukraine, why there are so many Ukrainians speak Russian, and what has changed since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. You may have seen a YouTube video like a blogger goes to random Ukrainians on the street and asks different questions. For instance, what language they speak. And a large number of people speak Russian. Isn't it surprising? When logically people should speak Ukrainian. Although Russian propaganda says that Russian language is being humiliated in Ukraine, it's ridiculous because you can see a diagram showing the territories where the Russian and Ukrainian languages dominate in Ukraine. And I want to know that Ukraine is a free country and no one has ever been beaten for language here. People can speak English, French or even Russian without difference. But in this case, why there are problems with the Russian language in Ukraine? Let's find the answer. The spread of the Russian language in Ukraine is the result of the Russia's imperial policy. The imperial authorities systematically and consistently pushed the Ukrainian language out of use, starting from the 18th century. With the help of the policy of Russification, they tried to form an all-Russian and then Soviet people. If they had succeeded, if the empire had been able to destroy our language, Ukraine would no longer exist as an independent country. Russian-speaking Ukraine is necessary for the enemy and mortally dangerous for Ukrainians. The fact that a lot of people in Ukraine speak Russian is what Russia is trying to use as proof that we and the Russians one nation, and that the Ukrainian state artificial. But in reality, this fact has opposite meaning. Now I will show you how Russia oppressed Ukrainian language for several hundred years. But first I need to say that Ukraine can never be compared with the Switzerland or maybe Canada, countries which have several state languages. The rhetoric of the supporters of Russian language in Ukraine is aimed only at those who only know about Switzerland that it's homeland of Swiss cheese, about Canada that it's somewhere far across the ocean, and about Spain that they play football very well. If you look closely and analyze language policy in these countries, it emerged from completely different historical circumstances, unlike in Ukraine. So in the same Switzerland there are 4 state languages, but there is no separate Swiss people. The Swiss are ethnic Germans, Italians or French, and they speak different languages, but have another national self-identity, Swiss. The Swiss language doesn't exist at all. Similarly in Canada there are 2 official languages, English and French. But there is no Canadian nation and language because this country of immigrants, and the comparison with Ukraine is incorrect. And now let's run through history that confirms my words. Historical facts that few people know, and those who know keep it quiet. Decree of Peter I prohibition the printing of new books in the Ukrainian language in the Kiev, Pechersk and Chernihiv printing houses, and the old books were ordered to be brought into line with the Russian ones before printing. Decree of Peter I on the censorship of Ukrainian books. Destruction of the Chernihiv printing house. Catherine II's instructions on strengthening the Russification of Ukraine, Smolensk region, the Baltic states and Finland. I can give facts for a very long time, but I chose the most absurd ones. Prohibition of delivering church sermons in Ukrainian language. Decree of Alexander III prohibition the use of the Ukrainian language in official institutions, and the baptism of children with Ukrainian names. Ban on Ukrainian books for children. Organization of an artificial famine in Ukraine by the Bolshevik regime, as a result of which 8 and more million Ukrainian peasants died. Mass relocations of Russians to extinct Ukrainian villages. You can see my full video about the famine right here. Destruction of architectural and cultural monuments in various cities of Ukraine. Arrest and execution of 18% of Ukrainian writers and creators. I could go on and on about the evidence that Russian language in Ukraine is a purposeful action of Russia over the course of hundreds of years to seize territories. And I can prove it. Now when Russia seizes Ukrainian territories, they justify themselves by the fake fact that they are protecting Russian-speaking people living on territory of Ukraine from Ukrainian nationalists, although it's completely nonsense. In my opinion, language is a weapon, and they use it to invent false facts. Russification of Ukraine would turn it not into the Switzerland, but into Belarus. And then to part of Russia, because the empire doesn't allow the coexistence of the 2 languages. We now see how Russia destroying Ukrainian villages and cities, razing them to the ground for refusing to surrender. Russia has done the same with our language for several hundred years. Even 100 years ago, Taganrog or Bilhorod and its surroundings were part of the Ukrainian Azov region or Slobozhanщина. But total Russification turned the descendants of Ukrainians there into a part of the Russian people who invaded our homes. It's just ridiculous, it's crazy. And after the fall of the USSR, Russia didn't stop the Russification on the territory of Ukraine. Because of Russian language media, films, music, because of obstacles in the opening of Ukrainian schools. It's an interesting fact that personally I spoke Russian for many years of my life. It was when I lived in Mykolaiv and everyone around me spoke Russian. We even had a Russian language subject at school. But now I have been speaking Ukrainian for more than 5 years. It happens after I moved to live in Western Ukraine. Because everyone here speaks Ukrainian. You can see the language map again. Mykolaiv here, Lviv where I live now here. It's an interesting fact that Ukraine has been a part of various states and empires for many years. The east of Ukraine was usually part of Russia, the west part of Poland, and having analyzed how the Russian and Polish governments support the Ukrainian language, certain conclusions can be drawn. After the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine, many Russian-speaking Ukrainians began to speak Ukrainian, but many continued to speak Russian because they were already used to it. I don't want to blame anyone. Everyone decides for himself which language to communicate with. I'm sad because thanks to the Russian Empire, we, Ukrainians, are now quarreling among ourselves about the language. Belarus is a vivid example of what could happen to Ukraine without the Ukrainian language. Belarusians didn't fight for their language, and now only a couple of percent of people speak Belarusian. And you know that Belarusian government is very loyal to Russia. And now there are missile launches from the territory of Belarus. Write down in the comments what language do you think Ukrainians should to speak. And after watching this video you can support me for my work on Patreon, link in the description below. I will be infinitely grateful to you. If you were interested in watching this video, please support me with liking and subscribing. I appreciate every of my subscribers. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Have a great time.